Thank you so much, Ma'am Marinel. My name is Mrs. Cora L. Del Rosario from Ternate District, and I will continue the discussion how to write a literature review. So after identification of themes, debates, or gaps, now that you worked out the connections and relationships between the sources, we can structure the literature reviews outline. Let's have the example, social media's impact on the younger generation's body image. I will give you the four common approaches, which the first one is chronological, thematic, the second, and the third is method, and the fourth is a theory. First is the chronological approach, so from older to more recent publications. Iwasan natin dito yung simpleng paglilista lamang. So avoid simply listing, summarizing. So habang nagbabasa tayo, we better analyze patterns, turning points, and debates that had shaped the direction of the field over time. So for example, so from 2008, body image and media then explain how over time mass media like magazines focused on mass media turns to rise of social media, which also emphasizes visual content. We have the second approach, which is you organize your thoughts through themes. In our case, you could start by discussing research on the negative effects of social media. This leads us into the themes of mental health issues among Gen Z. Then we can narrow in on the more specific themes of the body image issues among Gen Z. On the third approach, if your sources use a variety of research methods, you can compare the results and conclusions of these different approaches. For example, you could start by discussing studies that use surveys and then look at the experimental studies comparing the results of these different approaches. For approach number four, you organize your structure based on various theories, models, or definitions of key terms or concepts. For example, you could start by discussing how different scholars have to find the concept of body image, then discuss theories that try to explain the relationships between body image and self-perception. So after outlining your literature reviews structure, ready ka na sumulat. Let's get writing. Huwag mo lang kalilimutan na just like other academic texts, with an introduction, body, and conclusion. Yan lagi ang nilalaman ng literature review. So generally speaking, the introduction of your literature review should clearly states the purpose and the focus of the literature review. If you're writing a literature review for your research paper on dissertation, restate your research questions and give a brief overview of what you'll discuss. Then you emphasize the timeliness of the topic. So something like many recent studies have focused on the problem of X or highlight a gap in the literature. While there has been much research on X, few researchers have taken Y into considerations. If you're writing a standalone paper, give some background on the topic and its importance. So discuss the scope of the literature you will review, and also you include the time period of your sources and state your objective. For example, what new insights will you draw from the literature? So for the body of your literature review, it can be divided into subsections and used as a pattern for each theme, time period, and methodological approach. So I will give you four tips that will help you improving your writing of literature review, the body of your literature review. We have the summarize and synthesize as number one. The number two is analyze and interpret. Number three, critically evaluate. And number four is structured paragraphs. So I'll show you how these four tips by giving you some examples. So when we say summarize and synthesize, summarize, it means giving an overview of the main points. And when we say synthesize, it is all about combining sources to make an overall point. So showing the similarities and differences. So kagaya nga ng example na to, under summarize and synthesize, we first summarize the theory of Perloff 2014, then we synthesize several studies, as highlighted here, that have a similar focus and findings, illustrating a clear trend in the field. Number two, analyze and interpret. So it's important to add your own interpretation and discuss and the significance of findings in relation to the literature as a whole. So from this sentence, under analyze and interpret, we analyzed several studies and concluded by the visual and interactive social media or the most important factors on the body image aspects of the issues or issues. So tip number three, we have critically evaluate. You have to critically evaluate your sources to identify and discuss its strengths and weaknesses. So this is by taking a look at this example. However, in an era of rapidly changing digital technology, so this is a critical evaluation of your literature. You contributed your own opinion. You add your own opinion on how new technology is changing the world of media and body image. We have number four, use well-structured paragraphs. Make sure your paragraphs and sentences are cohesive. Use transitions, but be careful. The use of your transitions will be depending on your purpose as well, or depending on your objectives. If it will be like an additional of ideas, you will be using like moreover, in addition, and the others. If it will be like contradicting ideas, it's still the same or different transitions. So topic sentences to draw connections, comparisons, and contrast. So you need to use transitions in order for you to critically evaluate your sources. So finally, for the conclusion, sum up the main takeaways of your literature review. If it's a part of your dissertation, so here you should clearly show how your research addresses gaps and contributes to the new knowledge. Lagi naman ganun yung bagong kaalaman. If it's a standalone paper, so if it's standalone paper, you can summarize the major findings and implications and then make suggestions for future research. So you will have the gap there. Now for the final tip, before you go ahead and submit your paper, make sure to proofread and revise it. So apart from typos, you should also pay attention to overuse of passive voice and then repetition of phrases, then informal languages, and others. So natapos na tayo sa 5 steps on how to write your literature review. Ito na yung kinatatakutan ng mga researchers bago man or bihasang manunulat or mananaliksik. So ito yung tinatawag nating plagiarism. Ang plagiarism na kung saan hindi natin ina-acknowledge or hindi natin kinikredit or sinasite yung source of information natin. So Abadiano 2016, plagiarism using someone's writings, ideas, thoughts, and not crediting or citing the source of information. So we have types of plagiarism. The first is verbatim plagiarism. Ito yung simpleng copy-paste. Ito makikita natin sa mga estudyante natin, yung simpleng pagkuha or pagkopya, and then yun na rin ang ilalagay nila sa kanilang mga research, which is not actually hindi siya maganda. This is a kind of an academic dishonesty. Okay, verbatim plagiarism. It has here an example of nearly half a century. If you will be doing this, make sure to use or make sure to quote, use quotation marks. And then we have patchwork plagiarism. For this kind of plagiarism, for patchwork plagiarism, so imagine yung kukuha ka ng maliit na informasyon sa isang source, then kukuha ka dun sa isang source ulit, kukuha ka pa sa isang source, then you will, pag tatagni-tagniin mo siya, pag didikit-dikitin mo siya to make a whole, which is a patchwork plagiarism na matatawag kasi kinopya mo na rin yun pinagpatsi-patsi mo lang. So it's like to exclude yourself of committing plagiarism on this end, you have to include some paraphrasing. So paraphrasing wherein you will be just saying or translating the sources into your own words, but still crediting the source. So, ito yung pinaka may effort sa lahat ng plagiarism kasi kukuha ka sa isang source, kukuha ka sa kabila, and then kukuha ka, then pagsasama-samahin mo pa siya. So, ginagawa mo na rin lang yun. Bakit pa hindi na diretsahin mo na lang na mag-paraphrase ka? Total, nag-e-effort ka na rin lang. Okay, so let's have number 3, plagiarism, which is paraphrasing plagiarism. It is a common type, the most common type of plagiarism. So, it is completely okay to paraphrase, but just because you rewrote it in your own words doesn't make the idea yours. So remember to give credit and cite the original source. Ito yung global plagiarism, yung pang-apat, is when you take someone else's works entirely and use it as your own. So ultimong pangalan na kopya mo na. So minsan may mga batang ganun, pero that's global plagiarism. Yung nanggaling or sinulat ng isang writer from a different country, and then igagayahin mo siya, papalitan mo lang ng pangalan. So that's global plagiarism. Self-plagiarism. So it means that you can also commit plagiarism by revising your own work you've previously submitted. This is like turning in the paper you've already submitted for another class or for another conference or seminars. So that's recycling ideas developed from previous assignments. Just because it's your own work, it still counts as plagiarism or academic dishonesty because you've already gotten credit for the work. So that's self-plagiarism. Now, on how to avoid plagiarism, the first thing is keep track of your sources. So might as well use this table or this matrix when you do tracking of your sources. Kasi minsan nalilimutan natin kung saan natin nakukuha yung mga information or yung ideas natin for our literature review. So you better use or track your sources as early as possible. Nagbabasa ka na or kumukuha ka na ng mga ideas from different sources. Number 2 on how to avoid plagiarism is quote and paraphrase. When writing a paper, if you want to share an idea or a piece of information from a source, you must either paraphrase or quote the original text. So to quote a text, enclose the quote in double quotation marks and include an in-text citation or footnote citation according to the citation style you're using. Right now, we are actually using the APA 7th edition. So you also need to include either or in-text citation or footnote citation. The third one on how to avoid plagiarism is how to use a plagiarism checker. Plagiarism checker, where in most universities, most institutions, they use plagiarism checkers like Turnitin. Turnitin to detect plagiarism on our papers. So if you like twist upon hearing the name, you know already na talagang gumagamit sila ng Turnitin like Philippine Normal University. So using a plagiarism checker before turning in your paper will help you detect accidental plagiarism and understand plagiarism better. So this way, you can make sure that your paper is plagiarism free. So here is actually the list of some plagiarism checkers online. You may want to check them. So some of these websites or these checkers are paid and then some are free. So just try it online. And then we're done with or on how to avoid plagiarism. So are you ready to write your literature review? Okay, so get ready the ideas or the information from your books, from different websites, from different or various libraries. So let's get writing. So to avoid ourselves from committing plagiarism, here is a list of our references. So from the books to different websites. So here are our references. We hope that you learned a lot from our presentation. So from literature review, hope that you are already writing down your literature review on your researches. So now that we will be leaving you with this quotation. Aspiring writers should read the entire canon of literature that precedes them, back to the Greeks, up to the current issue of the Paris Review. So it will be like a total review of literature of your study. So hindi ka lang magpo-focus sa isa. So from theories to philosophies and then the trends, you will looking everything. So to have them as a good foundation of your literature review. So again, I am Mrs. Cora L. Del Rosario together with my partner, Marinel P.S. Labon of Trinate District. Thank you so much for watching and for listening. Happy researching!